Okay, so first of all, we're kicking things off today with an exciting panel discussion that reimagines the role of teachers in the classroom. No longer just lecturers or content deliverers, teachers are now becoming guides who create interactive, student-centered learning adventures. So this first session this morning is entitled Flipping the Script. Teachers turned guides in the interactive classrooms. So first of all, we would like to welcome up onto the stage Sushil Basin, military-inspired leadership and team-building expert at SB Consultancy. Humanushin Mirza, nursery manager. Ashima Dawan, Program Director of Studies and Assistant Professor, Creative Industries Management at Heriot-Watt University in Dubai. Nayetha Uren, CEO and founder of Recovery Coach Academy. And Professor Lawrence Headley Brown, Director and Principal Consultant at National Life Skills Academy, UK. Let's give them all a round of applause. And over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Just to let you know, Ashima isn't with us this morning. She had a family issue. So we are got three amazing experts who get to give you a bit more of their expertise this morning than we planned. So, and an opportunity for you all to ask lots of questions. So, as our moderator said, we're going to talk about flipping the script. So, to get us started, I would love to ask you all a general question. You've got a few more minutes than you thought you had to respond. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say today. The interactive classroom represents a shift from teaching to guiding. How do you see this transition benefiting the students? And why is it necessary in today's landscape? Come on in. Let's start with the lady on the panel.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Huma, and I'm an early childhood educator and leader here in Dubai with over 15 years of experience. Currently, I'm doing my doctorate in education with the topic of hiring novice teachers and their impact on the classroom management skills. So yes, coming to the topic, so shift from teaching to guiding is nowadays is very important than ever before, because of the evolving times. Now we have to create the future leaders. We have to have that shift where the children have to learn the skills, 21st century skills, which cannot be taught alone with the whiteboard and a marker. So the teachers have to give the ideas and the skills of to the students of today's age, which is like collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity, and the communication skills, which can help them in their practical life when they come into in later years. So yes, it is very important, and that only the teachers can do it when they involve the students in their own learning journeys, when they involve the children into their own, when they give them the choices, and then when they are given the trust and confidence to be the part of their own learning and to get involved. So, and the collaboration and critical thinking also comes with when the children, when the students collaborate with each other, when they get to know each other, when the teacher understands the strengths of the students and then give them the guidance and the resources to thrive in their learning. And if I talk about the early years education, which is my background, so in the early years, like for the little children, the basic skills that any child has to develop, the fundamental skills are their communication skills, their physical development, and their social and emotional development, which can only come when their human interaction, when the teachers are not only delivering something which is like, just to teach them, but this is when the teachers are involving the children into hands-on activity, giving them the projects to work together, when the teachers are giving them the classrooms are set in a way where every child is involved as per their own personality and learning styles. So yes, this interactive teaching strategies are very, very important in nowadays to develop all the skills that are needed for future leaders.
Super, thank you so much. Come on in. What is your thought on this?
Thank you. I agree with Ruma a lot. Everything she said was so profound. But before I go on to talking about the flipped classroom, I want to first answer one question which many of you may have. What is this army guy telling us about education? So I'm quite a soldier turned educator. I have a TEDx talk to explain what made me leave the army and come into the world of education. And that was when I was a chairman of an army school, a job that was not really my primary job, but an administrative, extra honorary job. And I was told the school is in a bad shape and I've got to set it right. In my sincere effort to change the school, I fell in love with children. And one day, something great happened where it turned my life. I left the army prematurely, sacrificing my promotion to the rank of general, and decided to devote the rest of my life for youth development. So and now for 20 years, I've been training or speaking to students, to teachers. I've done principals training programs. And all of this was all experiential learning because I ran a camp, an outdoor camp, where we used outdoor and adventure as a tool for learning. I start by telling teachers, you are not a CDM. I don't know how many of you know what a CDM is. You're not a content delivery machine. It is not that I know you don't know. So I'll tell you, you listen. Now that trend, firstly, today's child who has a lot of access to internet, knows sometimes much more than the teacher, gets bored because he's listening to something he already knows. And that becomes very, very, very sad for the child. Then when he gets bored, he or she gets into other things. They'll start looking into their phones. Phones are not allowed. They'll look out of the window. Their attention is not there. So therefore, it has become very important that we flip the script and involve the students, because when they do something, they are involved in it, the game totally changes. So there are three things that happen when you flip a classroom. Number one is active learning. No longer are students just listening, just absorbing, and just believing that everything the teacher says is true. They get to do it. They get to discuss with each other. They get to watch videos. There are n number. They do role plays. And when they do all this, it brings in a lot more interest, and the child starts owning their learning procedure, the process, that, oh, I'm responsible for it. I'm doing it for myself. I remember many years ago, at least when I was a child, many children thought that you were doing well in academics as a favor for your parents. Now children have started realizing it is for their good, it is their responsibility. Okay, so three things that happen is, one is active learning, where people get involved, and when they do that, their sense of curiosity, innovation, all this starts improving. The second is personalized learning. Here the teacher gets a chance to know everyone individually because of the experiential activities that you do, the interactions, the role plays, whatever. And that gives you a chance to understand the child. And therefore you are able to personalize the teaching for that child. And the third thing is that it brings in a culture of lifelong learning. Because when this happens, you think learning is an ongoing process. So this makes it very good. Why is it required? That today's world has changed. As I said earlier, the child is more exposed to the learning environment than it was a few years ago. And therefore it has become important that the child is involved, understands what's happening, owns the responsibility, owns the learning process, and takes good part in it. So that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lawrence, I look forward to hearing what you have to say now.
Um, where to start? Thank you. Not much left for me over here, really.
I'll start with you next time for the next question.
Let's, if I get it too close, it muffles. So is that okay if I keep it there? I don't like using them. I try and avoid it. I've learned to project. We all know in this room the positives of a flipped room. We don't need to extol the virtues of that anymore. Can we look at the reasons and the problems of, I go back when I was 15 or 16, was 50 years ago, which is around 10 school generations. If you think of a school generation as being 5 years, it's like 10. Even then, I knew that what I was being taught at school was pretty useless for the life I was going to lead, or was intending to lead, or hoped to lead, or in the society that I was moving into, because I realized it was already 50 years old. It was the same techniques that had been done 50 years earlier in a Victorian system, where teachers are struggling to find the time in their day to expand a curriculum into an engaging interaction. And they couldn't do it. They really couldn't do it. And as things have got more complicated over the last 30, 20, 10 years for teachers, and the stresses and the emotional strains of dealing with 30 kids in a room who don't want to be in the room, they become volatile. And that's a lot of stress and emotional exhaustion and weariness for teachers who are coping with young people on different continuums, messing around in the room. So it's become much more difficult for teachers to make their lessons engaging. In fact, I've been really quite upset in the last 10 years to watch my own girls coming home from British and American school systems. In Saudi Aramco, they have an American school system. And in the last 5 or 6 years, as they completed their A-levels and stuff in England, that it's the same system I have at school and the same stresses that I had as a student 50 years earlier. The teachers are essentially giving a third of the curriculum to the students to take home and do for homework. So they're crying over their homework at 11 o'clock at night, scared because they haven't finished it. And the teachers are still positively ticking their quality assurance boxes every week. Yes, I've stuck to my quality assurance demands. Well, you haven't, because you've dumped it on the kids, and the kids are straining. They're bursting at the seams with frustration. One of the ladies, I think I mentioned this earlier, one of the ladies that retired with me from Saudi Aramco went back to England at 60. And she was stuck. She didn't know what to do. I mean, she's not going to get a pension until she's 66. She's personally, like I was, unemployable in England at 60. So she said, I want to be a maths teacher. I know that I can go in for training because there's a shortage of maths teachers. So she was accepted. You see, I'm going back 9 months. She was accepted and she started at college and she got a grant to do it from the government because they're paying you to do it. And after the first week, she called me up almost in tears and she said, I can't do this. I said, why not? She said, the children are feral. Feral. They are wild animals. They're uncontrollable wild animals. And it's sad that our classrooms have come to that. My own daughter was self-harming in her maths classes, digging her nails in the back of her hand, hard, and then hiding it from us. She's still got the scars on her left hand because she wanted to learn. She's very good at maths, and the Aramco school is very good at maths. So she was 2 years ahead. So she's bored in the class, and the boys are stopping her from learning because they're messing around. And so she was self-harming. And I think this situation it's becoming a revolution. That if we don't learn to engage the young people more, there is a revolution going on. 7 or 8 kids recently, and since 2019, have forced the government to change curriculum disciplines and lower the walls so they can bring climate change learning and hooks into each of the disciplines. 7 kids did that because they got a petition together and they suddenly got 30,000, and then they've expanded that. Now instead of 7 young people, it's now 40 people, and they've changed the school curriculum. In the Labour manifesto for this particular election we just had, they've actually rewritten the curriculum in order to do this. So it's taken a 5-year journey, but it started with 7 young people. Now that movement, it's called Teach the Future teachthefuture.uk, has now emigrated across to other countries. In Australia and America, it started again. There's a revolution going on. And so I think teachers very quickly need to release the emotional pressures and say, okay, let's flip this around. I've tried to find this article recently a couple of times. I read it in a newspaper. It was a letter in a newspaper. And it was a math teacher working with grade 8s in England. So what would a grade 8 be? 13, 14 grade 8s? And he said, okay, here's the curriculum to the class. You get yourselves into working groups. You take each part of the curriculum and you teach it. And I'm just going to sit back and watch how you do. Let's turn this into team roles. Let's turn this into collaboration. Let's turn this into adult teamworking and collaboration exercise. And he said it was absolutely incredible. He said what they did was they owned it and they taught it and they collaborated in ways that blew his mind. And once you've done that, you never go back. You will never go back, because it makes your life so much more relaxed and so much easier. And I'm sure many of you have tried it, and it doesn't have to be done at a highly technical place. I mean, the first time I did it deliberately was in 99, and I was invited from the military college to the higher colleges of technology in Abu Dhabi to write the first internet course for the UAE military. And back then it was young men from Fujairah or out in the desert who didn't know how to hold a mouse. So it was really very, very foundational. And then they said, would you stay on? Could you write us a degree program? One of our first academic degrees, they had a degree program. It's a vocational training college across the Emirates. There were back then, I think, 12 campuses, male and female, very segregated and separated. And now there's 26, I think. And they said, could you write our second degree in applied communication and public relations? I said, yeah, of course I could. Okay, and could you do it in 6 weeks? Because we've got the students waiting. They've all graduated with their HNDs and they'll be coming in the evenings. So it would essentially be an evening class. So, oh yeah, can you put it online as well? And can you do it in 6 weeks? Yeah, of course I can. Yeah, why not? So I met the students. I had to interview 33 students in Abu Dhabi men's, Abu Dhabi women's, Dubai women's. They were all graduated. They were 20, 21, 22, 23. All of them working in communications and media. So Al Jazeera had just started, Abu Dhabi TV, Dubai TV, etc., etc. And very deeply segregated. Now, how do you bring in an online environment, in a hybrid environment, how do you bring campuses together when they can't sit in the same room together? How do you form a cohesive cohort when they can't even talk to each other? So I remember in the first year, I organized a talk at Dubai Media City. One of the biggest media companies invited us to bring the students in for a morning, and they would show them around how the systems work that they were bringing into the UAE. And I'll never forget, Khalid was sitting in a room, his thobe. He was the first person to arrive from Abu Dhabi. And this lady, let's call her Sheikha, had her limo drive her up, her driver drive her up. And she came in veiled. I'd never seen her veiled, because in the women's colleges, they'll open up. They won't veil completely. And she came in veiled. And I said, morning, how are you, Sheikha? She went, and she turned around and walked straight out again. I watched out the window. She got back in the car and drove back to Abu Dhabi, just because Khalid was sitting in the room. She couldn't even sit in the same room, veiled. So then they tried TVs. Well, Etisalat back then, if I had a camera on me in head office or in my office, if I had a camera on me, they had television screens in the male and female colleges. The idea was it would be projected and they could return it. I could hear them. 4 bridges, 2 for visual, 2 for audio, didn't work. Either you had no video or you had no audio. Etisalat couldn't really get it together. So I had to drive. And I drove to those 4 colleges every week, and I conducted the materials and the delivery, and I had to do that. It's 100 miles apart, so it was kind of tiring on your own to do this. So in the morning, this is how I flipped it. This is what I was coming on to. This is what works really well in this region. I was teaching in Japan. You go into a classroom, the kids won't talk. Adults don't really want to talk. So you're basically an entertainer for an hour. That's it. You leave that environment and then you come into the military camp in Shahama, you can't shut them up. You just can't shut them up. If they shut up, it's because they're asleep. Teacher, what? Teacher, sleep, teacher, you know? But they're just so funny. And so I thought, okay, I've got to work with this. This is brilliant compared to what I've been doing for a few years in Japan. This is really meaningful. Let's let them talk. So the way I flipped the classes there was in the morning, I would write the topic area, because I remember I only had 6 weeks lead time. So I'm on the fly all the time. So I would write the topic area down, an essential 1-pager or 2-pager on what it was, and I would put links to dictionary.com on the words I thought, like semiotic theory. The word semiotic would have a link and take you back to dictionary.com, for example. And other links I would litter it with 2 or 3 websites I knew that we could initiate a conversation around, that they would take a learning journey. So if you go into any classroom, in a flipped classroom, you've got probably 5 who've done the work and hit those links and wandered around for a few hours. And then you've got 5 who've done nothing. And then you've got this continuum in between. So you utilize the dynamics of the room and you say, okay, Sarah, Samaya, Sheikha, what was your learning journey? And they will talk about the links they clicked and the journey they took on that route to get to a different place than Sarah did. Because she took different links. The first ones are the same, but she took different links. So actually, what you're doing is you're emoting a conversation between those who did and those who didn't, and those who didn't are now listening to them, because it's a community of learning now, a very homogenous community of learning. So now everybody's picking it up, and the ones who didn't do anything are now becoming interesting, because Sheikha's got excited, because Sarah's extolling the virtues of organizational behavior and her particular journey through that. So that's how I flipped the classes. And we did that for the 3 years. We did that all the time. And it was mind-blowing, the outcomes. I got a personal award from Sheikh Nayan because of the accreditations we received.
Super.
It's really good. If you think that was 2000, and the only tech then was one discussion forum. We only had one it was called quicktopic.com. Just one discussion forum. And that changed everything for me.
Yeah. Super. Thank you so much. Let's go to you, Nina. So I did a bit of research in Recce on these lovely people. So I have a very specific question for each of you individually. I would also like to encourage the audience. I want to give you an opportunity to ask some questions. So I am going to now try and keep these lovely folks on time. You have approximately 3 minutes to answer your individual questions so we can allow time for our fabulous audience here. In your experience, what strategies can teachers use to maintain student engagement in interactive classrooms, especially when working with such diverse learning styles? Because we know people learn differently, don't they?
Yes. So in my opinion, it's very simple. You have to observe, plan, implement, and then reflect. So observing children's needs and their learning styles is very important. So that's the basic thing. So teachers have to first observe the children in their classroom to see who learns in what way, and then provide them the resources to go through those phases. So the observation of the children is the main thing, that the teacher has to understand them, then only they can do the personalized learning for the children. They have to understand their special needs, their interest, then only they can provide them the resources to thrive. And I'll just give you one example from my previous few years back for a 3.5 years old child in my class a couple of years ago. So she had the interest in building blocks, building towers with puzzles and things like that. So, and we had the topic of learning about parts of the body and organs and things like that. So I've just made a small model on lungs. It was very simple, very, very small, on the lungs, and showed the children how the lungs, operate, how do we breathe in and breathe out. And there was a class of 20 children, and everybody got the opportunity to function on that model. But that particular child got so interested into that topic because that was her own learning style of doing with learning through the modeling and operating the model at first hand. So she got so interested in that later on her parents told me after a month that our daughter is now only building the models learning about the internal organs, learning about the parts of the body, and she has watched all the videos on those things, and she has got so much knowledge that we have to buy her the resources to keep working on that. So yes, observation on the children to give them the personalized learning is the key, and then plan the activities in a way which caters all learning needs of the children in the classroom. There you can provide them different learning zones, because in early years for young learners, yes, we have to give them so many resources to teach one, to give them the idea of one topic. There needs to be multiple resources. There are role playing, there could be learning zones in terms of reading and in terms of sensory activities. So many resources needs to be there in the classroom for all the children to learn on their own pace, learn in their own area of interest, so they can, by the end of the day, by the end of the so they can, the same learning objective can be achieved, but with different multiple activities, different multiple resources that the children can utilize to enhance their own learning. And yes, then reflecting on the resources that we are providing, reflecting on the planning that the teachers are doing to improvise and improve that one, and then to see like if this works for this group of children and how I can improve and implement. And then continuous provision is the key to engage the little children and young learners in the classroom, and then to provide them the opportunities to choose, because this is something very important for little children to learn to choose the activities which interest them, and then to get engaged and involved. So yes, these are the main things in my opinion that the teachers have to.
I love the word choice. When we give learners choice, we engage with them so much more. Yeah. So next to you, this man has inspired me while I have been researching about him. He's written one of many books, but what really stood out was in recovery, we often talk about a buffet, an adventure, therapeutic. All of these words just resonated so much with me. So I'm sure not only your professional experience, but a bit of lived experience can come into this question for us. You have championed experiential learning and leadership. How can interactive classrooms foster these qualities in students? And what role do teachers play as a guide in that process? Tell us more.
Thank you. So I will take you back to my camp where we practiced experiential learning. And before I come to that, I will ask the audience, raise hands if you were babies at any time. Oh, you were. Good. You try to recall, and if you can't recall, imagine that you are crawling towards the kitchen and your mom sees you and say, "Hey, don't go there, you'll get burnt." Did you know the meaning of burnt that thing? No. So you still went and touched the stove or the gas or whatever and burnt your finger. How many of you think you ever went back to your mom to say, "Can you please explain what a burn is?" At that age of maybe 6 months, 1 year, whatever, you understood for the rest of your life what burn is. And that is experiential learning. You learned how to ride a bicycle by experience. You can read 100 books on riding a bicycle, you'll never be able to read it. You need to do it yourself. And if you've learned the balancing art on the cycle, or in the distance, the beautiful area which I couldn't see from the ground, it was fantastic. So I just reminded them, I said, when you grow up and you have a vision, you see from a distance. Your teachers have gone up this already and they have a vision. So when they tell you something, when your parents tell you something, it is because they've already been to that height. So if you listen to them, means they are telling you what you couldn't see. So they say, you could see the nods. And then when I came down, oh, it was so nice. The feeling, the confidence that I got, the first 2 steps were very difficult. It was difficult to let go that rope. But once I did that, it was enjoyable. Now, when you relate this to the lessons that you learn and then you apply them in your real life, it is so much more powerful than telling the same thing to the students in the class. Now, normal classrooms, you may not be able to go out and do rock climbing, but there are now enough of activities, and technically we call them activities, but you could easily turn those activities into games. So I use the word games because the children then related to it much better. So you say, oh, you like to play a game? No, who says I'll not like to play a game instead of reading a book? Oh, yes, yes. And they go, you play a game. Now, when you play a game, there is collaboration. You're helping each other because you can't play a game alone. And when you collaborate, you understand that I couldn't have done it alone. I can only do it with the help of others. So that brings in the spirit of team, collaboration. Okay. Then you realize that here, the results were not as important as the journey. And that's what I emphasize. But once they've experienced it, you tell them, are you feeling great now because of the results you achieved, or were you feeling good while you were going through it? That's why we enjoyed it while we were going through it. And I said, that's what life is. That enjoy your journey. Don't worry about the destination. So these statements, don't worry about the destination, enjoy your life, they look very theoretical. But once you explain to them with a game that they have played, it sinks in forever. So that's my take on it.
Thank you so much. Lauren, you bring a different perspective to some of these conversations. So from a psychological perspective, how does the teacher as a guide approach and impact student motivation and autonomy? And what challenges might arise through that? And then we'll open up the floor for questions.
Okay. I know we're all sold on the idea of flipping the class for very good reasons. Otherwise, probably you wouldn't be here. It's easy. I've just been asked by one of my old students, who's now a vice provost in one of the Abu Dhabi universities, would I come in and show the professors how to flip the classes instead of doing didactic teaching to the wall, instead of the banking method. And after 20 years of having done it, I'm amazed that it's still happening and that teachers, PhDs especially, are still coming in and just doing didactic teaching. It's just unbelievable to me. I was asked to go to a university, a very good university. They were liaising for PhDs with Brunel. This is in Bahrain. And Brunel University, we're in and out, and I was asked to help with that. And I was also said, well, could you also do the quality assurance? Because we've got 120 professors who are going to be in triangulation of evidence visits in about 6 months. Could you help with that as well? And do all the paperwork? And I said, yeah, fine. Oh, and by the way, could you also start a 3-credit elective starting teaching this week? We've got the students waiting for visual photography and design. Yeah, okay. So I thought, I don't have time for this. So I said to the president, I'll do it, but I'm not going to teach it. I'll let the kids teach it and I'll just facilitate. He said, okay, how's that going to work? I said, well, watch. So I went in and I had introduced Moodle. I had a website company. I'd introduced Moodle to the university. So I only picked one facility, and that was this. And I went in and I said, here's your grading assignments. I've written these matrix, these grading assignments for you to be communicating. Now you're going to be communicators, communicating the knowledge you've learned. And I'm going to give you topics. Now, luckily, there was about 13 students in the room. So I gave each one of them a week and a topic. And then on the discussion forum, I didn't write anything. I used a photography, an Australian photography website that I've been looking at for a couple of years as it built. Very, very good. Digitalphoto.com it was called. And each week, I just put a link. I didn't write anything. In each week, I just put a link. And I said, Aisha, that's your link. That's your link, Samaya. That's your link, Abdullah. Deal with it. And it was one of the most incredible experiences. I was in the room, and they would get up and they would give a presentation for 7 or 8 minutes, putting across and then communicating with the students to make sure that it was inculcated. The points were inculcated. I graded them. I codified the level of communication. And I didn't do any work. I walked out with them when they were doing photographs because I had to be with them when they were actually taking the practical side of it. But when they came together, and on the 3rd week, They introduced me to Flickr. They'd already started their own Flickr accounts as communities of learning and were globally competing in the third week. The results were just, talk about motivation and psychological safety. They looked at me like, is that all we're going to get on the first week? I said, yeah, that's all you need. I'll be here for you. Deal with it. And they went away, and within week 3, they had taken it over and run with it. I think the psychological safety was built by week 3 of 13. And I did nothing. I just sat back and let them get on with it. There was one occasion when I stopped a young lady giving the presentation. And I said, I have to stop you because, and I asked the group, I said, why do I have to stop? And they said, because she's got her back to us and she's reading off the slides. Now, she came from Dammam every day. She hadn't had the benefit of international education. And this isn't an English class. Let's call her Aisha. I said, Aisha, come back next week and give it again with Sumaya. You okay with that, Sumaya? If you work with Aisha this week and do it in Arabic. And they all said, no, sir, you can't do that. You can't do it in Arabic. This is in English. I said, well, I can't do it in Arabic? What are you talking about? Have a look at your grading rubric. Does it say anything there about not doing it in Arabic? Got to level the playing field. She came back next week and she owned it. I had to get a tissue. I had tears running down my face. She owned it. She just owned it. It was incredible. So flipping the classes is not difficult. It's very simple to do if you just have faith in the kids. Thank you.
That is amazing. It sounds like showing people how they are empowered, how they can be a resource to their own learning. And that requires us to trust them. And sometimes we're not the expert in the room all the time. And that's hard to admit. Does anybody have any questions for this amazing panel? Would you like to take a stand at the mic, or would you like to step up, or can you project really well so we can all hear you? Great. Thank you, sir. Super. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
What really happens is that when you do this flipping of the classroom properly, the interaction between the students and the teachers, they get to know that this is the requirement of the student, and then the teacher can personally see that student gets that part of what that he is looking for. Also, what you think that these are the old, that these students require the old traditional teaching, maybe your perception, but once they start experiencing the classroom with the new environment, they gradually turn into the system and start learning from it and don't require that anymore. So these are the two things that happen. Both ways, the teacher has the ability and the power to be able to identify this and then take remedial measures, because that is one of the strongest things we said, is that the teacher gets to personalize and know the students, because in the traditional classroom there's not much scope for you knowing individually.
Thank you. Anybody else? Lawrence, come on in.
I think there's another factor across Asia is parental influence, and parental expectations interfere and are at odds with much of this more autonomous and student-centered learning And I've worked as a dean across all of Asia, from Shanghai to Lahore to Bangalore to Singapore to Jakarta and everywhere else in between. And much of it is Asian mums and aunties pushing their kids into a deep academic rigor, and they do not want that to be changed because they don't believe it's true education. They believe if you're not applying the effort at your desk in the evenings for 7 hours, and this is prevalent, it's not just, it's still there. 40 years after I struggled and failed everything at school.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. I am determined I am going to follow the time schedule and not prolong your last day here and keep everybody on task. So with 11 seconds to go, I want to thank this amazing panel for sharing your expertise. I invite all of you to please continue the conversation with all of us today. When we step off the stage, do not let the learning stop at this point. And thank you all for your participation and attention.